ikke rørt en...
2, 1, and we're live. Um, right, I'm here with Casper. We were just bitching and whining about when we last actually had a game of Bold Action. It's a long while for some of us. I actually had one game last week, which we didn't even finish because we were 3 against 3. So that we had a complete newbie like who had his first game there, and it was fun. But we only got to turn 3, so.
So half a game.
Half a game. I've had half a game. Right. Like everyone else, we're sitting here waiting for version 3. Before we turned on the camera, we had a lot of discussion about the recent leaks. Before we do anything for today, I just want to say that for me, I am not going to comment on people leaking stuff that they possibly can and possibly cannot. Are not allowed to leak. So on this channel, I'm not going to comment on that. There's a lot there. Apparently the guys were playtesters. Maybe they don't even have the finished product. So I'm not going to comment. I've course read through it, but I'm not going to say anything about it. So that's it from me on the leaks. Today, Casper and me, we are going to talk Minor Nations. As always, Casper is my go-to person for everything that's non-competitive and minor in Bold Action. So Casper, welcome to the channel again. And have you been following along on the intelligence reports from Warlord Games?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So how does that look for your Greek armies and your Slovakians and all of those miners that I know you love?
Again, we don't really know a lot of concrete stuff about the Minor Nations, so it's more or less pure speculation.
Yes.
If the force selection and the different platoons that are available, if they're all available to Minor Nations, it will increase the competitiveness and a lot of other things for the Minor Nations, because
It will be a huge bonus for them.
a huge bonus, suddenly you will be able to field so many units that you have not been able to field before. And you can have multiple selections of different units, which was never something that was available for most Minor Nations. I know that for the French, the Belgians, the Dutch, you could have an extra artillery piece, and for the French, you had the option of buying inexperienced infantry, and if you got 3 of those, you got a 4th for free. But so like multiple anti-tank options, or anything basically with a multiple choice. That was not an option, and most of the theater selectors were what was in the original Armies of books, and they were more or less just
they were very limited, weren't they? Like,
it was sort of like a filter. You can take this for this campaign because this was what was available in that theater of war. And for most Minor Nations, especially the Allies, it was all a question of when they tried to prevent Germany from invading them, more or less. So there was one theater of war.
So extremely limited for most of it. For me, at least, I as soon as I saw the new force organization chart and partisans is like that's my army. I have a large partisan army now, and I was immediately like struck by what I could start building instead of what I already have. Of course, I think that there might be some limits because it would make absolute no sense for partisans to be able to take tank platoons. I mean, what partisan army ever had many tanks? Like maybe one or armored car or something, but not a tank platoon, right? But so I was immediately like, okay, you could absolutely limit that, saying like no tank platoons for partisans, but definitely like you could build new types of platoons. You could have recce platoons or all of that stuff that would immediately make them much more viable in a lot of point settings and order drive settings. And so I was struck by how much more viable that you could make minor armies with this new force organization chart. Do you also think? Yeah. Do you also think that because a lot of the joy of playing miners comes from like building and fielding a force that nobody else has? Do you think that a lot of more people will start playing minor nations if these force organization charts are really what's going to happen to miners?
Maybe. I think that they will suddenly become an option that people will not dismiss immediately.
Yeah.
Again, I think a lot depends on figure availability. As you saw with Italy, suddenly, that was even before Case Blue came out. The launch of a plastic set, both from War Games Atlantic and Warlord Games, you saw a huge increase in people saying, "Oh, I've bought these Italians and now I'm going to paint them." How many were painted? I don't know, but there was a huge increase in sales.
You saw an increase in Italian armies when you went to events. You really did, yeah.
And when they were given good rules in Case Blue, you saw a lot of them. I used to be the only Italian player in Danish tournaments.
But then there was like 5 or 5.
There was a guy, Morgan from Funen, also played Italians, but we were more or less the only ones.
The only ones,
yeah. So I think if you can suddenly see, oh, this is a bit of a niche army, and if you're just a tiny bit like me, I'm like an old lady. So if I bring the example of the old lady who's wearing a dress to a party and finds that 2 other people at that party is wearing that dress, she might go
so you
home.
Immediately move to something else.
Oh yes. So I'm a bit like that. I would prefer to have an army that nobody else has. And if we take the last games I had and the last tournament I attended, the Danish Nationals, there were, I think, 6, 7, or 8 Italian lists.
There was a lot,
but they were very similar. They were black
Yours
shirts.
was the only one that really stood out because you were using your Alpinis.
Exactly, and I was very pleased about that.
Yeah.
So you suddenly get the option to field a niche army that can actually do something where you actually have options, because you don't right now. You are more or less looking for, oh, can I actually take some? Can I find a figure or a vehicle in that slot? Because it's not always possible. And then there were a lot of, I think, unintentional errors in both Italy, Axis, and the Allies, and France, and the Allies, and Italy and the Axis, where you had the generic reinforced platoon more or less being less than a theater platoon.
Yeah, most theater platoons were a lot stronger, had a lot more options than the generic reinforced platoon.
Yeah. But most tournaments are generic reinforced platoon.
At least in our meta, that is true.
I used to have Greek army, and they had a specific cannon, but I could not take that because it was only available. It was the only difference between the generic reinforced platoon and the theater platoon. And there was
one gun.
One thing. I was like, I don't think this is the intention.
No.
And there's been I have a Bulgarian army.
Yeah.
And if you look at the Bulgarian army, you say, oh, you can take a Stuk and you can take all of this, but in reality, you can't really. Only if you're allowed to play the theater platoon.
Yeah.
But then again, when you go and buy what's it called, Panzer 38, from Warlord Games, you
Mm.
get decals for the Bulgarian version,
Yeah.
and it was like you're not allowed to take it, but only
here
only,
we'll
only in
sell
the
it
theater
to you.
film. Here,
Yeah.
but here are the decals, and
Yeah.
I believe inside on the leaflet there's how to paint a Bulgarian tank.
I personally hope that a lot more units will now, because we know already that what is coming out with the rules will be generic or whatever. They're not. We don't know what they're doing with theater and generic platoons anymore. But it sounds as if there'll be a huge release of units and platoons where you can build those units in. So I'm hoping that a lot more units will be available, especially for the miners, because that was one of the things that limited them. But with the new force organization chart, I also think that they're no longer limited by the platoon and how you can build that, which is really nice. What about nation spatial rules?
With the leak that came out a couple of days ago,
which we're not talking much
which
about.
we're not talking about. Okay.
But we do know that free units are gone, right? And
Yeah.
that they are looking back at the national special rules that were there previously in what they're thinking. We don't know what the end results will be, but
the free units are out, and they of course are gonna put something in place of that. But I was more optimistic a couple of days ago, without saying too much. And again, my focus is more or less Italians.
Yeah.
But I really hope that they will look at rules that will not limit minor nations. They're limited enough in their in the amount of selection that they can take for infantry or tanks or more or less anything. So give them some fun rules, not excessively powerful rules, but give them fun rules that make them distinct.
Yeah.
And I thought they did something really good with Case Blue, because they made three nations a lot better. You can argue that some people would still take the original Romanian rules because they gave you a free unit and the access support, but at least for the Hungarians and for especially the Italians, you had the option of gaining a playstyle that you thought, wow, that this would this I can actually tailor my army towards either an assault army with the black shirts, move and fire with the Bersaglieri, or just a lot of movement with the Alpini mountaineer stubborn troops. So it gave you options, and I don't think any of them were more powerful than the major nations, but
no.
they were suddenly seen at tournaments, at least in Denmark, because people saw, wow, there's something I can do here.
Yeah.
And for me as a non-competitive player, I was like, wow, suddenly my Alpini are actually worth something. I would field them anyway, but
they could do stuff, and they were fun to play, right?
They were a lot of fun to play, yeah. Them just running through all terrain was a lot of fun.
Brilliant. That's so brilliant, yeah. So to sum up, we were cautiously optimistic, and then the leaks sort of pulled some of the air out of that balloon, and we are now less so. Is that it?
Yeah. My fear is that they will look at the original rules and just sort of say, let's go with those. Yeah, copy paste, more or less. Which will be the death of the Italians. Not for me, but for a lot of people. A lot of people who has invested in a huge Italian army will say, no way am I gonna be hindered by the national rules. And then I think that will be the case for a lot of other people who's bought into a minor nation and thought, at least I'm not hampered by a national rule, but new edition might be good with something that makes them a bit more different, because especially
give them something positive, right? Not something that really like is a detriment.
Yeah, because every army at some point shined. Even if it was only a single battle. And I know the bolt action is Hollywood. I know that, but still, if you want to,
that should make it even more so. You could even because it's Hollywood, you can basically say this one battle they were really good, so let's go with that one, right?
So, but again, I'm still excited because in my preparation for the Danish nationals back in March, I thought, okay, I really want to try and see if I can play an army without any vehicles. And I held a small cozy Christmas tournament at my place. We were 4 players, and I tried this army. And because I was limited in again the available slots, I was very limited in my choices, and also in trying to get the number of order dice to sort of just more or less
match up to Japanese hordes or whatever.
No, not really, but just sort of like I think we were playing 1,000 points or 1,100. I can't remember, but I was always short on order dice. Because I had no other slots available. So I was fielding medics and intelligence officers, even though that didn't generate a die. But now, looking at what I tried to do in December, and I ended up bringing 2 vehicles for the Danish nationals. If I look at the different platoons now, I'm thinking, wow, I can really create this Alpini army that I want. I have the option of taking a lot of anti-tank rifles, a lot of artillery, and I can take my my MMGs, which I really like, a couple of mortars, all of that. The heavy weapons platoon and the artillery battery would suddenly make my idea of having a non-vehicle Alpini army a lot more viable. Yeah, definitely. And
so that was also one of the things that I immediately was struck by, that I don't think what we've seen so far, I don't think for minor nations that you need to go into the vehicle platoons like the Recce platoon or the tank platoon. I think you can absolutely build a lot of minor nations with just the rifle platoon and maybe a heavy weapon platoon on the side. So that was also really, really nice, because it means that you can field more or less all infantry armies and not be hampered also with the death of, or more or less death of, the darker tanks, right? They're like, most of them are going to go away now.
So, but and again, even though they might limit a certain type of platoons and say, okay, Norway didn't exactly have a tank platoon, did they? The Greeks had an armored platoon, one, so they might be an option for them. But I still think it provides a lot more options than they used to be. And I can see it from the recent, I think, email or just ad that I saw from Warlord Games, something about get your heavy weapons teams for your Alpini. So I thought, at least they haven't removed that from the Italians. So
you might need to buy some for me as well, because I think perhaps I'm going to have some medium machine guns at some point.
I have most of it. I have 2 of each. Because the option of if the pack was so that you could have a dual platoon. But definitely I'm gonna get an extra anti-tank rifle and 2 more medium machine guns and stuff like that, because I really like that. I like my weapon teams. And
They
with
just
the
got
new rules,
way better now. So yeah.
so with the new rules with the sniper, they're suddenly a lot more survivable.
Yeah.
So
They'll still die, but they won't at least
yeah,
off the board in one shot.
yeah.
Yeah.
If they are hit, you can still move them,
Yeah.
and it's not like, oh, it's gone.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think
Right.
the options will be better, definitely, even if they might not give us anything in international rules.
We hope that they will, though. Right,
Yeah,
Caspar, thank you so much for coming on the channel and talking to us about miners in version 3. We shall see what will happen.
definitely. Yeah.
Right. I will talk to you again, and that was it for everyone else tuning in. Thank you so much for this, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.
Yeah. Bye bye.